Just one sec. Okay. Thanks for your patience. All right, so welcome back. I hope that you had a good weekend. We are really close to the end of the term. In fact, this is one of two remaining class meetings. Just as a reminder, we are not meeting on Wednesday. I will be out of the country and presenting some of my research on health communication at a conference, but I'll still be available for email and just to answer questions that you have as you're working through things. That means that for today, we'll be talking about gender in health and science. We're only spending a day on it, not because it's not important, but just because I think we can cover a lot of ground for today and as we're gearing up for this week's quiz. So we'll be talking a little bit about some of the articles here and giving you a chance to speak to and share some expertise related to these. So this week is a chance to understand gender's impact in health and science communication, knowing that it's something that we've alluded to and discussed in a lot of different ways. For example, how people across different genders and experiences might encounter health experiences very differently. For example, women reporting challenges of being taken seriously by a doctor, men encountering challenges in terms of what is considered to be healthy, what it means to be healthy, and a variety of gender and sexual minorities who have identified a lot of unique challenges and concerns related to whether it's being taken seriously by a doctor or receiving care and service in an affirmative way, and so on. So there's a variety of concerns and factors that we have to think about on those issues. And also a question, if we're being involved in a health field or we see that in our future, or whether we're just interested in studying and understanding communication better, right? The way that gender impacts our understanding of health and science is one that's crucially important. So as we get into today, as a brief recap of last week, we talked a little bit about the presentation, including the feedback and grades on those that are available on Canvas. We also talked about the extra credit opportunity and the campaign essay. Remember that that is your last assignment in the class, and that is due on June 11th. The extra credit is available too if you want to do that. It involves creating your own campaign. And then we also talked about how different theories and approaches explain the way that health and science campaigns are implemented. So for example, we looked at things like the trans-theoretical approach and this idea that people are motivated to receive health information, use health information based on human behavior, patterns, and so on, right? This idea that oftentimes we're motivated by our peers, by peer pressure, that we're motivated not just because we want to do something, but we need to develop a plan in order to actually get that put into practice, and so on, are some of the ways in which campaigns might fall short, right? That while a campaign could be really well designed and very informative, if it's not thinking about human psychology and what motivates us to actually change a behavior or kick a habit, it's not really effective in that way. Again, thinking back and thinking ahead to your own paper for this class, you might think about how these theories of human behavior and persuasion might relate to some of the goals and aims of this campaign, right? I mentioned, for example, that a lot of health campaigns will ask you to make a plan or develop an approach so that you not just are persuaded, but you are actually taking steps in order to do something. Another subtle way that we see this is my eye doctor will always automatically schedule an appointment for me like 6 months out. They'll just pick a random date and schedule me for that date. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, hey, you need to go in for your appointment. And I'll have to cancel it or I have to reschedule. But because I have to reschedule it, I'm already in touch with them. And so I have an incentive to actually either make that date or schedule another date because they've initiated that contact, right? So a lot of the strategies that we see providers using are related to those strategies of human behavior and persuasion. They're useful things for us to think about and you to incorporate as you work on that essay. So for today, I want to give you the chance to do a bit of brainstorming and thinking about this campaign essay to help you to prepare for that assignment. And then we'll also be discussing this week's readings related to health and science communication and gender. I decided I wanted to do this a little bit differently. I could talk about the key ideas and takeaways in each of those articles, but I think if we kind of flip things around and we have a split up and have you all look into those articles a little bit and share some of the things that are standing out to you, I think that that might be a more engaging way for us to go through those and understand the key ideas that each of those articles is bringing to the table. So we'll do that in just a little bit. So as mentioned, we'll not be meeting this Wednesday, but I will be available to email. Our final class meeting of the term will be on Wednesday, the 6th, because next Monday is Memorial Day. So we'll use that final class meeting to kind of do a wrap up for the course and also to talk about communicating science and health in the context of disability. I assigned a few articles from a journal called Disability Studies Quarterly for the final week of the term. So we'll be talking about those things a little bit. And then as mentioned, the essay and extra credit are due on the 11th. For that essay, that rubric's on Canvas. You're still welcome to send me any ideas or drafts or things that you're sort of dealing with as you're working through the assignment, including any questions that might be coming up. Again, I'm asking you to pick a campaign that you're interested in and really analyze and get into how that campaign communicates about health and science. And I also talked a bit more about that extra credit opportunity for you. So before we do this, I do want to give you a few tips about this essay. So as you're thinking about the campaign essay, one of the things that we talked about last week is that every campaign has an ideal person, right? Generally speaking, a campaign has a specific person in mind that they're trying to get to change their behavior or to do some type of action. We use the example of trying to get people to wear helmets when they're riding a bike. And maybe we're thinking about like a teenage boy who's kind of reckless, who likes to have fun, who doesn't take having a helmet on very seriously, right? And that might be how this campaign visualizes that person. So as you're thinking about the campaign, be thinking about who that ideal person is. You might think about, for instance, who they represent in their advertisements, what types of celebrities or spokespeople they have, because oftentimes they will try to get people who look very similar to or really try to reflect that ideal person that they are trying to convince. And the tone and style of that campaign too, right? We looked at something like a campaign that's trying to get people, kids to go outside and play instead of watch TV. And that is a very animated, it's fun, it's cool, right? It's trying to use that type of strategy. And be thinking about sort of this idea of that the levels of stimulation involved in a campaign are based on things like age and other demographics, right? A campaign geared more toward an older audience is likely going to have fewer bright and flashy colors, and it might be more conversational. Be thinking about mass media. So the Alkalay piece is a really great resource as you're thinking about and developing this project, because it helps us to look at how mass media is useful in developing a campaign, but it also points to some of the limits, right? This idea that because mass media is sort of widely circulated, it's like a tweet that goes out to everybody, that it has a lot of limitations in terms of actually engaging with a person, right? We get so much content every day, we get advertisements and notifications that our ability to actually engage with it and engage with a person is a lot more limited. So the use of mass media might be one challenge that these campaigns might have. They get lost in the noise. Be thinking about the use of new media, including the use of social media, right? So for instance, a lot of campaigns are using social media outlets in order to get people's attention, to convey health information, right? Organizations like the CDC use outlets such as Twitter to convey information. But also be thinking about if there are unique kind of cutting edge styles that people are using too. So other forms of new media such as TikTok, or maybe even utilizing some of the more controversial developments in social media and communication technology. Maybe there's a health campaign that's like awarding NFTs to people who choose to get a blood test or something like that, right? So there might be a variety of new ways that campaigns are trying to reach the public. We also discussed this idea that oftentimes a campaign is going to create for itself what it considers to be a measure of success, right? So when you're assessing and figuring out if this campaign is effective, don't just think about it in terms of whether it's persuasive or not to you. Think about whether or not it's persuasive based on the goals this campaign has set for itself. For instance, are the goals about awareness? Are they trying to get people to understand, for instance, that cervical cancer impacts a variety of people in a certain age range? Are they trying to get people to get out and get a test? Are they trying to get people to change their health behaviors, right? Depending on those goals here, the campaign is going to really try to differ in the things that it does. There's also campaigns that tend to be much more policy focused. For example, is this campaign trying to get a specific state or federal legislation passed? So you could think about those goals as well. Oftentimes those goals are identified through the campaign's website or promotional material. And then the last thing that I recommend, right, is to just try to focus on specific examples or parts of the campaign that you could cite or draw from, right? So for example, something like DARE is a massive campaign, right? Or something such as Got Milk, like that's huge. So you might be thinking about specific commercials, advertisements, posters, or other pieces of communication that you can hone in on for your analysis. Or you might focus on a specific era of this campaign too. So for example, maybe you're focused on the ACT UP campaign that was designed to promote more research toward HIV/AIDS training and research in the 1990s and early 2000s, right? So depending on the campaign that you've chosen, be thinking about what parts of that campaign you really want to use. I really recommend, whenever possible, picking that depth over breadth. So what I want you to do now, and you do not need to turn this in, this is just for your own notes and work, is be thinking about some of the health or science-related campaigns that you're interested in exploring at this stage. Might be ideas that just suddenly come to mind, or it might be ideas that you've been thinking about for a little while. And as you're thinking and maybe doing some initial searching, what are some of the ways that this campaign communicates? And do you consider this communication among this campaign to be effective? So take about 5 to 7 minutes to start to think through and explore this idea a little bit. you've wrapped up or as you're wrapping up your brainstorming and work here, I'd like you to find a partner or group of 3 to chat with, just to exchange some of the ideas that you have at this stage for possible campaigns that you can analyze in this essay. For example, how might you incorporate an examination of this campaign into your essay? So take some time to share and chat a little bit about some of the ideas that you have. So it sounds like most groups are about done. So as far as these campaigns go, right, these don't necessarily have to be good campaigns either. If you want to, and it sounds like a couple of you have already developed some of these ideas, you could think about a health or science campaign that just like failed for a lot of reasons. Maybe it was that it just didn't reach its audience correctly. Maybe it set goals that it couldn't meet, right? So that could be an option too. And one of the things you could focus on is how you see those failures is happening and what could be learned from that experience too. So doesn't just need to be a campaign that works, but kind of hearing from folks so far, it seems like there's some really good ideas for campaigns too. For example, focusing on mental health awareness, focusing on sort of like economic and financial costs related to particular issues or sort of health consequences and so on. So interesting things to explore. These could be campaigns related to the topics that you chose for your disparities presentation. So for example, maybe an initiative or campaign that's designed to support Indigenous health. That could be an area to focus on if you wanted to, or if there's a topic that's different you want to explore, you could do that as well. What I want us to do next is take some time to look at these articles. So I want to do a brief overview of the 3 articles that are assigned for this week. So this week we're talking about gender and health and science. And I selected these articles because I think each one offers a unique perspective and approach to thinking about ways that gender impacts the communication process. So I'm going to talk through each of these just a little bit, and then I'm going to give you the opportunity, if you have a strong preference, to look into any one of these articles. And then I'll ask you in a small group of about 3 or 4 to take some time to look into this article and share some of the things that you have observed and discovered related to this. So this first piece is the Courtenay piece. This is about constructions of masculinity and their impacts on gender and health, right? So this one is interesting because it identifies some major chronic conditions and disparities that oftentimes men encounter in health. In fact, there's kind of an old adage that says that men often pass away sooner, but women are more often sicker over the course of their lives. There's a lot of ways that that's not accurate, right? That's an overgeneralization, but we do know that there are significant health issues and crises that can impact men in a particular way. Additionally, this study is looking at the ways in which men might be more likely to engage in behaviors that could negatively impact health. So it's examining some of the health-related behaviors that men experience in the ways in which gender and so on can impact that issue, and also how changes to the healthcare system and reforms might better support some of the unique risks and challenges related to men's health. So that's this first piece. Looking at this topic and trying to understand how health communication can support some of those unique issues. The next piece is the Bardemar-Winter piece. This one is looking at some of the ways in which women experience a variety of challenges as it relates to health. So it's a variety of approaches and the ways in which health is both conveyed to women and also how women communicate about and understand health communication through this messaging. So it's trying to understand how disparities are developed over time, thinking about a variety of issues, including race and so on. And then this last one is kind of an interesting application and looking at particularly the way in which individuals, including sex workers, have encountered a variety of unique health challenges and advocate for health communication needs, particularly given a discussion of risks surrounding HIV/AIDS. So I thought each of those pieces kind of takes a very different perspective, very different level of focus on those issues, but each of those can help us understand some of the challenges related to communication and health. So does anybody have any strong preferences toward exploring one of these 3 articles? Is there one that jumped out, or are you kind of neutral on which one you'd like to look into? Okay. Seeing as there are no super strong preferences on this one, what I'm going to ask that each of these 3 groups does is take a longer period of time, right? Since I know it takes some time to read through and discuss and to think through this piece. So I'm going to ask you to take quite a bit more time than normal, about 40 minutes. And what I'd like you to do in your group of 3 or 4 is to start by just kind of reading through or looking over the shoulder of somebody with this article on some of the key ideas and insights and points that are being made here in this piece. Once you've done that, and once you've looked at some of those major findings, what I'd like you to do is, in your group, prepare an informal discussion. It's not like a big presentation or anything like that, but it might be some major points and ideas that you would discuss to the class as a whole in about 5 minutes or so. And in that time, you should be addressing the following. What does this article teach us about gender in health and science communication? So it's pretty open-ended. You can take a variety of different approaches trying to understand what this piece is bringing to the table. But by kind of hearing from each group talk about this article and the contributions of this article, I think we can all kind of understand a better sense of health and science communication as it relates to gender. So it's about 2:30. I'll do a check-in at about 3 or so and see how people are feeling. If we need more time or you're feeling good to end a little earlier on this group activity. So take some time to really work through and find some of the key points here. And then once you all do, take some time to discuss and organize some of your thoughts about the key findings and observations that come from this piece. Oh, yes, and the groups. So let's stick to the groups that you all chose for sharing some of your ideas here. So let's have the group that is here on this side, focus on the Courtenay piece on constructions of masculinity over here. We'll have the group here in the middle focus on the Vardaman Winter piece on the framing of women and health disparities. And then the folks here on the other side will have this group of 4 focus on the Vasu and Dutta piece. So again, take some time to chat and work through this reading and prepare some thoughts to share with us as a group.